My guest at this time is Travis Weber. He's the Vice President for Policy and the Director of the Center for Religious Liberty at the Family Research Council. He joins me today to react to the decision from the U.S. Supreme Court in American Legion versus American Humanist Association. By a 7-2 margin, the High Court says that a memorial cross from the World War I era can stay in Bladensburg, Maryland, which is just across the line from the District of Columbia. And Travis, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, the Family Research Council, and you were directly involved with this, filed an amicus brief, depending on how you say it, in support of the cross obviously staying. What do you make of the court's decision today with Justice Alito essentially saying that, yes, the cross is a Christian symbol, but there's a larger meaning in this memorial?
Yeah, so we're pleased with this result today. It's good to see the court affirm that a public memorial, in this case a veterans memorial that's shaped like a cross. The decision really affects a variety of historical monuments that have religious expression. But in this case, the court today saying this memorial can stand is perfectly consistent with the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It's not an establishment of religion. It's good to see a majority of the court agreeing with this result. The court could have gone further to clarify the tangled confusion of the Establishment Clause case law that's currently on the books. But the heartening thing is this decision moves us in the right direction. And really, there's a lot in this opinion, or the multiple opinions that were issued today, because you had a number of concurring opinions and just different positions laid out by different justices, really, I would say, digging in the grave of the Lemon test. The Lemon test being the opinion which has really resulted in a lot of public religious expression being erased from the public square, I would say inappropriately and unconstitutionally. But this opinion is something we have to deal with. So the court today really laid the groundwork for Lemon and these bad opinions to be removed in the future. So I would say this is heartening for several reasons and really a good result.
Dig into that a little bit more. What is it that judges misunderstand, whether out of their belief in the separation of church and state, or perhaps they're bringing other issues to the bench, of what the Establishment Clause is and how you believe some courts are misinterpreting it? Yeah,
so the Establishment Clause, the text of it prevents an establishment of religion. Now, the question is what the founders of our country, the framers of the Constitution, meant by that. Looking at the text and the plain meaning of that text at the time that the Constitution was drafted, it's very clear that they were getting at the state setting up formally a system of religious belief and forcing people to abide by that specific system of religious belief. They were not getting at any religious expression in the public square, which is how so many people, including the American Humanist Association, the challengers of this memorial in this case, this is how so many people view the Establishment Clause today. It's just incorrect, looking at the history, the Constitution, and the process the Constitution underwent at the time of the founding of our country. So it's important that judges interpret the law, in this case the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, interpret that provision instead of reading into it their preferences when it comes to policy. It's very important to have originalist judges looking at this and saying, what did the framers mean by this? What did the text mean at the time the Constitution was adopted? If judges do that, they will come to the conclusion that Lemon and these more modern cases, more recent cases that have resulted in religion being erased from the public square really are unconstitutional or wrong decisions under the Establishment Clause. In this case today, the result is that a public expression of faith, which if you were purely applying the Lemon test, might result in the cross being taken down today. In this case, the court said, no, we can't let that stand because the Establishment Clause has to be interpreted by history and tradition too. And they moved in that direction today. So we applaud the result today, and we look forward to these other bad cases and issues being dealt with in the future.
So the cross in Bladensburg gets to stay, and I know there's been other crosses. I know there's one out in the west, in the desert. That's also been a huge focal point of legal action. But those get to stay. What about ones that folks may want to put up in the future, given where we stand right now culturally and legally? How easy or difficult do you think that'll be?
Yeah, so one of the aspects of the opinion that was issued today one of the points that the court noted was that, and was that basically this, because of this cross-shaped memorial was established and put into place many years ago. It has a significant historical presence and a track record of being in place for many, many decades before being challenged. Therefore, the court should be much more hesitant to rule in a way causing it to be struck down today compared to a similar memorial, cross-shaped memorial, that someone wants to put up right now, or was put up 1 or 2 years ago. I'm not sure that's the correct approach. Nevertheless, the court did focus on that in today's opinion, and so we're looking at an opinion which I would say is moving in, was a movement towards a more originalist perspective, but the pure originalist position on this question should not look at the factor that something has been in place for a long time necessarily as determining whether it's an Establishment Clause violation or not. But according to the opinion today, we do look at how long a memorial has been around, basically, for one factor in assessing its constitutionality.
We're talking with Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy at the Family Research Council. He also directs the Center for Religious Liberty. We mentioned it was a 7-2 decision. Justices Ginsburg and Sotomayor were the ones dissenting, Ginsburg doing the writing and saying, quote, "Just as a Star of David is not suitable to honor Christians who died serving their country, so a cross is not suitable to honor those of other faiths who died defending their nation." What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I would say that's not really a place to make that determination. It's for the fallen service member or their family to make the determination of how they want to be honored. And the fact is, in this case, that there were those of other faiths who were honored by the placement of a cross, commemorating them jointly. Now, if people have a problem with that, that's perfectly fine for them and their families to say, "This, I want to be honored differently, or in another manner with a symbol of my own faith." The fact of the matter is, though, as the court pointed out today, the presence of the cross in association with veterans memorials, gravestones, etc., is something that developed a more secular context and connotation in jointly commemorating those who died defending our country, even if they did not subscribe personally to the Christian faith. So it has a unifying effect. It had the effect of bringing together those in the armed forces who gave their lives for their country. Now, look, some may want to be honored with a symbol of their own faith. That's fine. That's their decision. But we also, at the same time, should not dismiss the unifying effect and the role the cross played in jointly commemorating many people, perhaps of different faiths. And the court notes this in the opinion. So I would just say that the dissenters are overly sensitive to a perspective which would erase religion from the public square. They're overly sensitive to a hyper-individualized notion of how religion is played out in the public square, because we cannot dismiss the Bladensburg community's decision to commemorate its veterans and fallen in this way. And many communities around our country today decide to express religious faith in their communities in their own way. It's not expressed in other communities, but that's their decision. We have to be careful to not dismiss them and push their religious expression out of the public square.
Finally, Travis, the Supreme Court session almost over, but there are other key cases out there. What else are you eagerly anticipating in terms of verdicts here in the next 10 days?
Well, for a lot of the cases that we have been focused on, this was the big one today. We filed an amicus brief in the case. We had been closely tracking another case in which our friends at First Liberty Institute represent one of the parties, the Klein's case, Sweet Cakes by Melissa, which the court basically recently kicked back down to the Oregon Court of Appeals to be redecided and reconsidered in light of the Masterpiece Cake Shop, Jack Phillips case out of Colorado. These are all religious freedom cases, some under the Free Exercise Clause. Today's was under the Establishment Clause. But these are the cases we're really focused on. There's other cases before the court in terms of whether the court's going to take them up, that some abortion and pro-life related cases that we're looking at that may carry over till next term. This is it as far as big decisions that we're going to be closely tracking, but we expect a lot of our issues, some of the pro-life issues of the Trump administration and policies that are being challenged in the courts, other issues that we're going to continue to track, continue to bubble up to the Supreme Court. So we're definitely not going away in terms of the things that we're tracking before the courts.
Travis, very interesting. Thank you so much for your insights today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Director of the Center for Religious Liberty at the Family Research Council. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.